Hello and welcome to my Chemtech guide. My name is Tomorrow77. I'm currently ranked 16 on the Oath's Challenger leaderboard. Now the main pros to this comp is that it's strong at all stages throughout the game. It's not augment dependent, however there are a lot of augments that it can utilize quite well. It's flexible with the units at all stages throughout the game, meaning you don't have to just pick up the Chemtech units. It utilizes streaking items, which means you're always conserving as much HP as possible, and it's not an overly contested comp as most people are playing it wrong, and so therefore they don't value it as high as they should be. The main carry for this comp is AERØHEAD, and some of the units that you definitely want to 2-star is Lissandra, Mundo, and Zac. The biggest problem people make with this comp is tunnel vision too hard on itemizing AERØHEAD. His best in slot would be Runen's Deathblade and GA, however you definitely don't want to prioritize these items every single game. The main reason is because although AERØHAD's the carry, he's not the only source of damage. This board actually caps out with a lot of strong units, and even though you've got tanky frontlines such as Lissandra, Zac and Mundo, they all do a decent amount of damage, and it's better to build items which utilize all of them rather than just AERØHAD. The other reason is because Deathblade early game is a dead item, and even if you have Runens, which does make it slightly better, there's very few units who can actually utilize it, and so therefore you're more likely to bleed out during the mid game. But slamming items such as Shiv or Spark in the early game will help you out a lot more, and these items aren't actually dead later, as a lot of the damage from your Chemtech frontline actually comes from magic. So of course if you're given the option to get Runen's Deathblade later into the game, then by all means take it for your AERØHAD. However, pretty much every single game, my priority for Chemtechs is Morello's and Shiv. One item however that is pretty decent to greed for is GA. This is because early game you can put it on your frontline units and effectively acts as more than a Warmogs, because a lot of the time when the GA procs they'll actually dodge an ability or two. And late game, AERGOT's ult will still go off even when he's in the revival phase, as you can see here. This is really good at saving HP during stage 4 and can actually win you a lot of fights further into the game. So now you know the strength of this comp actually comes from being able to utilize win streaking items such as Shiv, Spark, Morello, GA and Runens. Next up, let's talk about Augments, which this comp can use a lot of. Ascension's pretty decent because your units are tanky and fights last a decent amount of time. Binary airdrop's okay if you get it later into the game, as therefore you'll have more items and can actually utilize it. Bruiser Heart's obviously good because you're running a lot of bruises in this comp. Build different one's actually fine, you just use it up until stage 4 and then you pivot into an actual comp and pretend that you don't even have the augment at all. Calculated loss is also good, however don't intentionally lose, you don't need to, just play the game normally and receive the extra econ. Celestial Blessing's fine, just for a little bit of extra healing. Chemical Overload's quite good, however I don't like it too much in the very early game as it forces you into running only Chemtech units. And of course Chemtech Heart is good if you know you want to force Chemtech. Cybernetic Implants is really good early game, however it falls off later into the game. It's actually decent in this comp however, as you can spread your items quite well if you know you already have Cybernetics. Dominance is good if you get a strong opener, however it's very lobby dependent. Exiles is really good because you're running bruises, your HP is higher and so therefore the shield is greater. First Aid Kit's really good because Chemtech has built-in healing, and Hyperroll is by far the best silver augment you can get. This is because you just want to be aggressively pushing levels and staying under 10 gold, then you can hold units and flip over to 30 or 40 interest gold. You should always be one level above your opponents and then just donkey rolling at 8 through stage 4. Item grab bag's just a safe choice to go with, and makeshift armor is pretty good because you're running bruises so they get more effective HP. Pandora's items is really good at the start to guarantee you get what you need, however you don't pick it up later into the game if your items are already pretty decent. Friendly Frontline's not needed as this comp has enough frontline, but it's a safe choice to go with regardless. Thrill is fine, but Celestial's slightly better just because it scales. Twin Shot High is okay to take as your last augment. If you already have a Jinx and an AERGOTD, then you can just run 4 Twin Shot, however never take it early as it's not really needed. Underdogs is pretty decent as you have a lot of HP, so regenerating 10% is quite significant. And Weak Spot's okay if you've fully itemized your AERGOTD, however it's not really needed as a lot of your damage is magic and you should already have anti-healing via your Morello. Moving on to the gold augments, any of the silver tier augments such as Thrill, Celestial Blessing and otherwise, if they have a tier 2 version then obviously that's going to be good too. Note, I don't like Tome early because you can't guarantee a Bruiser or a Chemtech unit, so If you have the choice, try and go for something else other than Tome. Build different 1's fine because you're just playing down a silver augment once you pivot, but build different 2 is not okay because you don't want to be playing down a gold augment. Metabolic Accelerator is really good at all stages throughout the game. Just play the game normally, don't intentionally lose streak, and you can enjoy the top 4 just because you have more HP. Rich Get Rich is really good at the start of the game. Don't ever go to 70 interest gold because it's a bait and you'll lose too much HP. You're just treating this as a bit of extra income. Salvage Bin's okay if your items are a little bit scuffed and you need to remake them. However, I don't generally take this as usually I'm slamming win streak items, and so this isn't really an issue. Sharpshooter is good as your last augment if you've itemized your Ergot and or you have a Jinx. If you're just running a GA Shiv on your Ergot, then it's not too useful. Sunfire board can be okay for streaking early game, however I usually prioritize Morello anyway, so it's not that useful. Titanic Force is good as your last augment as most of your units will be over the threshold. It's okay as your second augment if you're running a lot of bruises and you've already hit some upgrades. Trade Sector is always good at all stages throughout the game. And anything that I mentioned that was good in silver tier is good in its gold form as well. Now moving on to prismatic augments, you need to be careful because a lot of other boards will get extremely capped with these augments, however Chemtech doesn't get that much stronger. Band of Thieves is quite good for streaking early, and it's decent late game as most of your bruisers in the comp can utilize the Thieves Gloves. Bruiser Soul is pretty good early as you can just run 6 bruises throughout your early to mid game and it's quite strong. You also get percentage health regen with your Chemtech, so it's good for that reason as well. Build Different 3 is a good augment, but you can't play Chemtech with it. Celestial Blessing's okay, but there's better options. Chemical Overload 3 is really good in the mid to late game if you know you're already running Chemtechs. Chemtech Soul is good as well, however Bruiser Soul is slightly better. Cybernetic Implants 3 is good as well. Exiles 3 is really good, especially with all the bruises. Golden Ticket is really good as the last augment. Getting it early is a little bit awkward. It basically just means you want to roll deep at 7 in order to cap your board because you'll get a lot more refreshes that way rather than greeting to level 8 where you'll probably just die. High-end shopping's okay if you get it as your second or third augment. Getting it early into the game means you're not going to be 2-starring any of your 1 costs and it can grief your board a little bit. Item grab bags is a safe choice to go with at all stages throughout the game. Level up's obviously really good at all stages throughout the game as long as you can just get to level 8 very quickly. Makeshift Armor 3 is insanely good in this comp, just make sure you're not spreading out your items. +1 Recruit is fine, it's just a safe choice to go with. Thrill of the Hunt is definitely on the lower end of the prismatics. Twin Shot Soul is only good as the last augment if your Urgot's already itemized and you have a good chance of getting a Jinx. Windfall is good as your first augment, and it's only really viable as the third augment if you really need that extra gold to roll down at level 8. My carousel priority items are Chain, Belt, then Bow. The reason is because slamming the defensive item is almost always better. The only exception is when you're playing an innovator board, then you want offensive items on your Ezreal. If there's ever a bow Ezreal on carousel, then I always go for that. During stage 1, you're just holding onto pairs. You want to prioritize frontline pairs because you'd rather have a 2-star frontline and a 1-star backline than a 1-star frontline and a 2-star backline. This is of course assuming that you're not playing innovators, in which case you'd much rather hold Ezreal pairs. You can pretty much play anything during stage 2, you're just looking for your strongest board, which would be a mix of frontline and backline. Unless you're holding onto a lot of 1-cost pairs, you usually want to go 4 on 2-1 and 5 on 2-3. Of course, things will change from game to game, but you essentially just want to be conserving as much HP during stage 2. I typically never open Fort with this build, as dropping down to 70 to 80 HP is never really worth the extra 10 to 20 gold you'd get. If you have a streak to maintain, then go 6 on 3-1, otherwise wait until 3-2. Now on level 6, you need to determine your board strength to figure out if you want to roll down at 6. Rolling down at 6 isn't actually as bad as you think, because usually it means you can 2-star your Trundle as well as some of your other bruises. This is really good because Trundle can actually often take you all the way to stage 5 if he's itemized correctly. Notice how I'm not rolling down for my Trundle 2-star because I already 2-starred my Ezreal, so there's not much point as I'm already decently strong compared to the rest of the lobby. The most important thing to recognize is that you want to be playing a comp which can utilize your win streaking items. So as I said before, I always try and slam GA, Shiv or Morello. Even Runins is really good. If I've got Runins and more AD items, I try and lean towards Trundle. If I've got Shiv and more attack speed items, I lean towards Ezreal. And if I slam a Morello, I either want to be playing Echo or Lissandra so I can get good use out of it. Remember that this comp is all about saving HP through stages 2, 3 and 4, and so by the time you get to stage 5, you might not have as much econ as other people, but you should be relatively healthy. If you're win streaking, you can go to level 7 and drop down to 20 gold. There's no point in staying on 50 gold level 6 if it means you're going to lose your win streak. But in most games, you're going to go level 7 after Wolves, and then you're going to roll down until you're stable. Usually this means 2-starring at least either your Zac or your Lissandra and 2-starring some of your other bruisers. Finding yourself an Urgot at this point is not actually essential, and if your Urgot's 1-star, you never want to be running Twin Shot during stage 4. Often if I don't hit my Urgot, I'm just going to be carrying a Trundle 2-star and making sure that I at least have a 3-cost upgraded. Your late game starts at 5-1 after Raptors. It's at this point that you want to be level 8 and rolling down to 2-star your Urgot and Mundo. You always play 5 Chemtech, which will consist of Zac, Lissandra, Mundo, Urgot, +1. Your +1 will usually just be either a Singed or a Warwick, however once you get your Victor you can swap it out for that. And if you're quick on your Augment selection and you have enough gold, you can actually pivot your board at 4-6. This is really good because you have a full minute to pivot your board, as well as the fact that most other players won't be pivoting until 5-1, so you can save yourself a lot of HP by changing your board early. And remember that we're running our 5 Chemtech units plus a Janna and a Jinx. If you don't find a Jinx, don't run another Twin Shot unless your Urgot is fully itemized for damage. If Urgot's just running Shiv plus Brunins and GA, then he doesn't actually need Twin Shot and you'll cap out a lot higher by running other units. This is because all the other Twin Shots except for Jinx are essentially just dead units. Usually I'm running Vi anyway because I'm running bruisers, and once you get that Jinx, having the sister buff definitely caps out your board quite a lot higher. And the reason that we run Janna is because she gives us a scrap bonus, which is really good for Jinx in case you have a leftover component, and the shield is very significant, especially because we have so many tanky units. The only variations you'll see to my board now is maybe running 1 extra Chemtech unit instead of Vi if you have a Chemtech spat. 7 Chemtech's pretty good, but you don't want to run 2 dead units such as Warwick and Singed in order to get 7. And if you don't hit your Jinx but you still have a Vi to make 4 Bruiser, then of course you can just run a Jace as well to give you an Enforcer buff, and keep in mind that Chemtech Jace is a very good use of the spat. Vi, Victor and Jace all shred armor, so you want to make sure that you have your Urgot on the same side as at least one of them. This way that when they're attacking the same unit, Urgot's DPS will be increased. Lissandra's ability is AoE, and especially when you have a Morello, you want to make sure that you're positioning her around large clumps of units. This is so that the ability gets applied to all. As well as the fact that Lissandra's ulti actually lowers AD, so as you can see here, hitting the massive AoE effect on the Urgot as well lowers his attack damage and his DPS gets reduced significantly. In positioning Urgot, you usually want him roughly centered, but make sure that he's not diagonally opposite any Luxes or Seraphines as their ultis sweep across the board. When versing Yone or Trundle players, you want to make sure that he's centered and far back. If you position your Urgot in the corner and the enemy positions their Yone or Trundle in the corner, then they can often just walk up and start attacking your Urgot. Remember, if you greed for Urgot items, you will lose, so try to avoid going after best in slot and make items which suit your current comp. With that being said, best in slot for Urgot is Runins and GA +1. Usually this means a Shiv because it's very useful to use in the early game. However, instead of a Shiv, you can go for some extra damage such as Deathblade or IE. Never run both, just one of the two. Some other items which aren't as good are Rageblade and GS. This is only if you have too many bows, and Last Whisper is really good, especially in certain lobbies. If you're running an early Ezreal carry, the first item you'll want is a Shiv. Runins is also really good, but make sure not to put your GA on him. Put the GA on a frontline unit. If you're running a Trundle carry, then you can pretty much put all of Urgot's items on top of him. Every single game you're going to want anti-healing, and the best form of that is a Morello on your Lissandra. This comp doesn't use too many rods, so this is a great way to burn it. Mundo can use pretty much any tank item, of course Dragon Claw if the lobby's AP heavy, and Bramble if it's crit heavy. This doesn't necessarily mean AD, as if you see a lot of dual gauntlets, Bramble's really good. Of course, Warmogs is also really good, just because his ability scales with HP. Redemption has really high value, and Spark has insanely high value if you don't already have a Shiv. Sunfire Cape's really good for streaking early, and so if you happen to make one over a Morello, then just put it on your Mundo later. Never go after Jinx items, because if you don't hit her on 8, then you're going to have a bunch of dead items. That being said though, best in slot is Rageblade GA +1, however she can utilize pretty much any item at all. This is because she has both AP and AD scaling, she does insanely well with attack speed items, and she can even utilize tank items because she jumps right in. Never itemize your Victor, however if you've itemized everyone else and you're on the final carousels of 6 and onwards, then you can chuck a Shojin on him because his ulti does break shields, which is quite useful. However, because you don't have Arcanist in, don't worry too much about items like Dual Gauntlet and Rabadons. And that concludes the end of this video. I hope the information here was helpful to you guys, and just as a final reminder that the strength of this comp comes from being strong at all stages throughout the game due to the utilization of win streaking items. Avoid greeding for those best in slot items and enjoy the free LP as you climb with Chemtechs. Keep in mind that there is a new patch coming out soon which does rework Chemtech slightly. However, I kept that in mind as I was making this video so that all the information should still be relevant after the changes. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them down in the comments below, and if you want to interact with me live, then please go check out my Twitch, which will be down in the description below. Thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you guys have enjoyed, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the next one.